Hi guys, welcome in. My name's Josie and I'm here to talk about building habits. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a STEM girly. I've got a bachelor's in physics. I'm also a creative type, so I like to paint, do arts and crafts, fun stuff like that. But most importantly, I, like you, am working on building and living my dream reality. What I've come to realize this past year is that the foundation of building and living your dream reality is in creating habits that you actually want to live with. So, not some idealized version you keep seeing online, but habits and a lifestyle that will genuinely bring you peace. For example, do I want to keep going to bed at 2 a.m. every night, or do I want to create a healthier sleep pattern that'll better support me as I work towards this life? And what bedtime am I actually going to be okay living with? Because it's probably not going to be 10 p.m. every single night of the week. This isn't about setting unrealistic standards for ourselves, it's about creating livable habits. As I'm sure you guys know, creating habits isn't easy. I've struggled, spent so much time researching, learning about, and just trying to find advice on how to build them. But none of the mainstream advice I found ever really helped me that much. And that's why I'm here today to share what I've learned from my own perspective as a young woman with ADHD about building lasting and sustainable habits. I hope some of what I share today is helpful for you, so please take away whatever information serves you and you can leave the rest. This isn't about following mine or anyone else's advice, it's about discovering what actually works for you in your own life. Today is the first video in a series focused on learning how to create and maintain habits in our lives from an ADHD female perspective, where we step away from some of the mainstream advice that hasn't actually worked for a lot of us. In this video, we're going to be focusing on ideas and mindsets that are going to help us build the supportive foundation from which we can build our habits and our dream lives from. Learning these concepts is the essential first step to building healthy habits and creating that dream life. Now, let's get into the advice. Mindset number 1. The first question to ask yourself. When you're considering starting a habit, the first thing I want you to do is ask yourself why. Why do you want to have this habit in your life, and what will it bring you? My general answer to this question is that you can't expect yourself to be able to create your dream reality without first creating an environment for you to thrive in. And this is where habits come in, because healthy habits are the foundation of our dream lives. See, routinely getting poor sleep, not prioritizing your nutrition, constantly being dehydrated, these do not support our minds and bodies, and we really shouldn't expect ourselves to function at our best from this place. I discovered this for myself in college. I used to get stuck in these cycles of trying my hardest to achieve something and either failing or succeeding, but with a lot of difficulty. Doing well in a course, for example, even if I was ultimately able to end with a good grade, it always took so much more time and effort and was mentally destructive when I wasn't operating from a place of prioritizing my basic mental and physical well-being. See, back then I didn't have the healthy habits that now support me and allow me to function at a much higher level. I honestly didn't think they were that important back then. I want you guys to see the importance of creating healthy habits in your own lives. I want you to see them not as something that external pressure tells you is good for you. Acknowledge and desire the real tangible benefits that implementing certain habits will have in your life. So anytime you're considering starting a new habit, I want you to take a moment to pause and actually consider why you want to have that habit in your life. Now, I want you to hold on to those ideas. It's especially helpful to write them down in a place where you can look back at them, like a journal or just a sheet of paper that you can tape up on your wall somewhere. Building habits from this mindset will finally allow you to create habits that you can sustain throughout the rest of your life. Mindset number 2, view habits as goals. I want you guys to start viewing the habits that you're working towards as goals. And I know it may sound a little bit obvious, but it's really worth expanding on. So, what do I mean by view your habits as goals, and how is that different from how we might normally view them? My old understanding of habits was that there's something you just tell yourself you're gonna start doing. I'd expect myself to effortlessly integrate them into my life, and when I was inevitably unable to do so because that doesn't actually work for most people, I saw it as a personal failing. That doesn't sound like a very healthy way to view habits, but if you've ever felt that way like I did, you're not alone, and we're gonna change it. A lot of times we're too hard on ourselves. We forget what it means to be human. There's no straight line to success or to the life we want. It all requires trial and error and effort, just like with any other goal. I now view the habits I'm working towards as goals. Specifically, the goal is the consistency and normalization of that habit in my life. With this shift, habits become something you don't expect yourself to be good at right away. It gives you the freedom to be imperfect, to mess it up and not get it right as many times as it takes. This view will help you overcome the anxiety of starting something new and all the pressure that goes along with that. Because you no longer have this expectation of needing to be perfect. You've eliminated restrictive expectations that you've had for yourself in the past. This will free up your energy to start building the life you want. Shifting our understanding of what a habit is from something we expect ourselves to be perfect at right away to something that takes effort, time, and has setbacks prevents the feeling of failure we might experience from having unfair expectations of ourselves. Viewing habits as goals gives you the necessary room to actually integrate them as part of your lifestyle. Mindset number 3. It is the individual choices you make every day that will define your habits. Another thing I want you guys to understand about building habits is that it's the individual choices you make every day that will define them. What I'm getting at with this is that in order for you to change your life in any way, you'll need to start making different choices on a regular basis. You can't keep making the same choices day after day and expect your life to change or for your habits to stick. That's one of the fundamental things to understand about creating habits. You will need to make new decisions. Those decisions will vary depending on what sort of habits you're trying to create in your life. For example, if you want to start prioritizing sleep, you can't keep going to bed at 2 a.m. every single night. You need to start making new decisions when it comes to your bedtime. Or if you want to stop feeling like shit all the time, you can't keep eating all of that sugar and processed food that you have been. That is a journey that I have personally been on for a while and continue to work on daily. But you see, that's the point. Even though I'm really happy with the life I live, none of it is perfect. It all requires effort and for me to continually make conscious decisions about how I act. Mindset number 4, the value of confidence and self-trust. An important mindset you want to cultivate on your journey to build habits is confidence in yourself and your ability to create and stick with them. It's really hard for our brains to let us do anything that we don't actually believe we're capable of. If you don't believe you're capable of having healthy habits in your life, you'll keep sabotaging yourself and never do what needs to be done to actually create them. I used to identify as someone who was incapable of having habits or routines in my life, but eventually I realized that was something I had just been telling myself and didn't need to define my reality. I've struggled with ADHD my entire life, But something that I've learned only recently is that it doesn't actually prevent me from doing anything. I just need to figure out what strategies and techniques work for me in my own life. Once this belief that I had about myself began to change, my success with building habits improved dramatically. Over the past year or so, I've consumed a lot of media promoting ideas like you create your own reality, you can't create your dream life if you don't think you're capable of having it, and you decide the reality you live. The first few times I heard these ideas, I definitely brushed them off and didn't really believe in them. But I think eventually, after hearing them over and over again, I began to accept it as a possibility, and I finally had the confidence and desire to try implementing it in my own life. One of the blocks I had in internalizing that belief that you create your own reality was fear. It's scary to create that belief, to decide that you are responsible for not only your successes in life, but also your failures. Where you are in life right now is because of choices you've made and beliefs you've allowed yourself to hold on to. Obviously, this isn't true about everything, and we weren't in control of the world we were born into, but there's such a large portion of our life that we are in control of once we allow ourselves to start seeing it that way. I want you to say no to any limiting beliefs that you've had about yourself in the past and what you're capable of. And I want you to start believing that there are no limits to creating the life you want. Have confidence and trust in that fact and in yourself. Trust not only your abilities, but your will to create the most beautiful life for yourself. Now, one video might not automatically rewire your brain, but I know it's a step on your journey towards self-actualization. So don't feel pressure to have all of your beliefs change overnight, and feel free to come back to this video anytime you need a reminder. Mindset number 5. What works for someone else might not work for you. On my own journey of learning how to create habits, there was so much information and strategies out there that simply didn't work for me. And anytime I would try like a new technique I learned about and it wasn't just not helpful, it made me feel bad about myself, like there was something wrong with me. But eventually I realized that not every strategy is meant to work for every person. And that's something I really want you to know as well. You have to play around and discover what actually works for you as an individual. This can take time and requires you to try and fail with potentially a lot of different things. And that's normal. So please don't feel stuck or discouraged if what strategies work for other people when it comes to building habits don't actually work for you. We all have a unique formula for creating habits in our lives, so trust that you'll find yours even if that feels impossible right now. Because trust me, I have been there. It's taken me a lot of time and effort to learn what techniques actually work for me. And that's why I'm here to share what I've discovered with you guys. Mindset number 6. You can do hard things. Creating habits isn't always going to feel easy. It can be hard and uncomfortable, especially in the beginning. But that's normal, and you can do hard things. When you're struggling with the discomforts that come from trying to create a new habit, remind yourself that you can and have done hard things in your life. Hard isn't bad. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. Struggling, feeling exhausted at times are normal parts of not only building habits, but of life. And a quick disclaimer I do want to make is that it's another issue if you're feeling this way all the time or constantly overwhelmed by having those feelings, and it might suggest that there's a deeper issue that you need to look at and address. See, we've all been through shit, so I know that you can do hard things. Just remember your strength and understand that discomfort is normal and essential to create change in your life. Don't run from it. Commit to pushing past the initial discomfort of building a habit. It's only temporary, and discomfort is essential for growth. Mindset number 7, consistency. Consistency is an aspect of building habits that's caused me a lot of emotional distress over the years. See, I grew up with the belief that consistency was all or nothing. You could either be perfectly consistent with something, and anything less than that I saw as a failure, a personal failure. As you can imagine, this resulted in a lot of failures and feelings of inadequacy, worthlessness, and at times self-loathing, all of which were barriers to me actually being able to create the habits I wanted. It wasn't until fairly recently that I learned consistency isn't a monolith. There are a million different ways to look at it. Coming to that realization healed a lot of those old wounds for me. See, people associate consistency too closely with progress. But what I've discovered to be true is that progress isn't linear. It means moving forward and falling back over and over again until the falls become shorter and your overall movement is towards the goal. And as we already know, the goal is consistency. But a goal isn't meant to be achieved immediately, and neither is you being consistent with your habits. So drop the belief that not being consistent with a habit means you failed. When I fall off of my cleaning habits and let my apartment fall into disarray for a week or two, I don't say, oh no, I failed and can never keep a clean apartment, though that's easy to do. No. I do the harder thing, and I remind myself that consistency is the goal I'm working towards and not the current expectation that I have for myself. See, each month it seems I'm able to keep my apartment cleaner and cleaner for longer and longer periods of time. But I never trap myself with the belief that not having a clean apartment 100% or even 50% of the time means that I've failed at anything. Allowing yourself to believe you failed with a habit is often an excuse to give up and stop trying, but that doesn't help you or bring you any closer to the life you want. Now, here's how you can apply this mindset to your life and what it might look like. Don't tell yourself that the habits you want to create are things that you have to work on every single day. If that works for you, great, but now I'm speaking to anyone who doesn't feel that way. For me, any strict schedule or timeline is just asking to disappoint myself. My first grievance with strict schedules and timelines is that they give this subtle underlying anxiety of having something that has to get done. And that's just completely unnecessary to me. If you've struggled with procrastination like I have, you can see anytime there's a schedule or a time frame of when you're supposed to get something done, you feel very much inclined to push things off and not get stuff done. And a lot of times we don't even know why. That comes in part from anxiety around a task, expectations, and fear of failure or outcomes. Your mind subconsciously sees and feels all that when you know there's a structure of how or when you're supposed to get something done. So my suggestion to you is that you say F it to quantizing your goals and habits, especially if that's never actually worked for you in the past. Telling myself I'm going to, for example, exercise 4 times a week for 30 minutes just feels completely pointless to me because life is variable. I can't predict how I'm going to feel tomorrow or what mindset I'll be in next week. It's just pointless to try and force yourself into a strict routine if that simply doesn't work for you. And I can honestly say I have never found that to be a sustainable way to create habits or any positive change in my life. Trust me, I have tried. But again, if that works for you, great, you can ignore this part. So, what's the alternative? How do we still hold ourselves accountable and actually get things done? Self-trust and self-love are a big part of it. Trusting that you'll do what needs to get done. Trusting that you'll continue to choose the habit more and more until it becomes a normal part of your life, because you deserve to create and live that dream that you want. You love yourself enough to give yourself that dream life, to make positive choices because you deserve the outcomes that they bring. Now, that's a lot easier said than done. To create the level of self-trust and love that I have for myself now has definitely taken me a couple years. But I'm going to be giving you guys all of the cheat codes, so subscribe and stay tuned for that. Another great alternative I've used to stay on track with my habits is to have a written list of the habits that you want to create in your life. Either on a blank sheet of paper that you can put up somewhere, or maybe in a specific section of a journal where you can go back and journal about your progress and setbacks. This keeps you moving forward without the expectations or anxiety. Trust that if you remind yourself of the habits you want to create in your life and why, and reflect on the changes you need to make and changes you have been making, that you will inevitably be successful in making this habit a sustained part of your life, something that you don't even have to think about. Another point on consistency that I have is the concept of cyclical habits. We as women go through cycles of energy, emotion, desire, interest, creativity, cravings, etc. So it makes sense that our habits can also fluctuate and follow cycles. It's not necessarily daily or weekly, but follows some sort of cycle that aligns with you and your body. And the cycle itself doesn't have to be consistent either. It's a habit that you flow in and out of. Its presence in your life fluctuates based on your needs. See, I used to get really upset with myself when I felt like I could only be consistent with a habit for a couple of weeks at a time, and then I'd fall off, only to return to the habit maybe a month later and have the cycle keep continuing. But I've discovered that that can be a natural and beneficial part of my lifestyle. A cyclical habit I currently have is with formal exercise. Usually for around 1 to 2 weeks at a time, I'll perform traditional workouts for the majority of the days of the week. I don't schedule them into my days, but during these weeks, I try and make the time available for me to have exercise as an option. And if I have the desire to move my body in that way during that time, I will. And if I decide to use that time for something else, that's totally okay with me, and I honor that. This cyclical habit isn't something I schedule. It's a pattern I noticed my body tends to follow. See, this was me a few weeks ago. My body had a strong desire to move and exercise, but for the past couple of weeks, I've been pretty busy and I just haven't had the desire or energy to try and fit traditional workouts into my life right now. And that's great. It used to stress me out when I felt like I could only be consistent with exercise for a short time. But I've noticed this pattern for myself, and it works for me at this point in my life. And this isn't to say I'm not physically active. My job keeps me on my feet, and I live in a very walkable city, among other things that I like to do for movement, like just dancing around my apartment, also cleaning. I feel like cleaning can sometimes be a real workout. For my body right now, working out on a cyclical basis works really well for me. If you feel good working out on a schedule or more routinely, that's great. And if you don't feel that way, that's great too. Do your best to honor your body when it comes to building habits. Learning to honor your body's needs and desires will take time. We live in a world that puts us so out of tune with ourselves, but I'm here to help us reunite with our bodies and build from that place. That's all I wanted to say on consistency for today. Now, with these mindsets as the foundation of our habits, we reach the end of part 1 of our Building Sustainable Habits series. Using the ideas and mindsets introduced today, you will be able to create a healthy and supportive atmosphere for your mind and body, where you can start creating habits effectively and, most importantly, sustainably. Because what's the point of starting a habit if it contains such rigid expectations that simply make it impossible for you to actually sustain that habit? Sustainable habits are what we're working towards. They're the goal. At this stage, there will always be days, weeks, months when we aren't where we want to be with our habits. But don't let that fact make you feel any less about yourself or your ability to create habits and the life you want. Learning to build habits is a skill that I want you to give yourself the time, space, and support to master. Part 2 of this series will focus on action steps that we can take to actually start building habits. It'll be different from a lot of the mainstream advice that's out there. This is all stuff that I've learned from my own experience as a young woman with ADHD, struggling to feel like I can build consistent habits and a consistent, healthy lifestyle. So, not the neurotypical, male-centric habit building advice that has become the standard of society today. This channel is where you'll find the unique information that took me forever and a day to learn. Stuff that finally feels like it works. Ideas that finally make sense. So, subscribe if that sounds like something you're into. Until next time, you're a hell of a lot more than you give yourself credit for. Okay, bye guys.